Can foreigners buy property in Mexico? The answer is yes, but the way it works is very different from what most people expect. Depending on where you buy, you might not actually hold the title in your name, even though you still control the property. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how the system works, why it exists, and what you need to understand before even thinking about buying real estate in Mexico. To understand how foreigners buy real estate in Mexico, you have to understand why the rules exist in the first place. Mexico's property laws go back to its constitution, created after a period of foreign intervention and land control. Because of that history, Mexico placed restrictions on foreign ownerships in certain strategic areas. These are known as the restricted zones, and they include land within 50 kilometers or 31 miles of the coast, and land within 100 kilometers or 62 miles of an international border. The idea was simple: protect national territory from foreign control. But fast forward to today, Mexico still wants foreign investment, especially in real estate and tourism. So instead of removing the restriction entirely, they created a legal workaround. So let's simplify everything. Yes, foreigners can buy property in Mexico, but if it's inside the restricted zone, you don't hold the title directly. Instead, you use a structure called a fideicomiso. A fideicomiso is a bank trust, but not in the way that most people think. Here's how it actually works step by step. First, a Mexican bank is assigned as the trustee. They technically hold the title to the property. Then you, the buyer, are named as the beneficiary. And this is the part that matters. As the beneficiary, you have full control over the property. You can live in it, rent it out on Airbnb, remodel or build on it, sell it at any time, transfer it to somebody, or pass it down to your heirs. Legally speaking, those rights are written into the trust agreement. The bank cannot use your property, sell your property, or make decisions about your property. They are simply holding the title on your behalf under Mexican law. Think of it like this: the bank is the name on paper, but you are the one with the control. Now here's another important detail. Fideicomisos are typically set for 50 years, but they can be renewed indefinitely. So in reality, this isn't a short-term arrangement. It's designed for long-term ownership. And this system has been used for decades in places like Cancun, Tulum, Puerto Vallarta, Los Cabos, where thousands of foreigners own property this way. So the big question is, do you actually own the property? Technically, no, you don't hold the title directly. But functionally, yes, you control the asset completely. And in practical terms, that's what ownership really comes down to. This is why you'll hear two completely different answers online. One side focuses on the legal technicality, the other focuses on real-world control. The truth is, ownership in Mexico inside the restricted zone is structured differently. But that doesn't mean it's unsafe. It just means you need to understand the system. Now here's something a lot of people overlook. If you buy property outside the restricted zone, you can own it directly in your name. No trust, no bank involved. Places like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Querétaro, San Miguel de Allende. In these areas, the process is much more similar to the US or Canada, which is why some investors specifically target these regions. There's also a more advanced option. You can buy through a Mexican corporation. This is typically used when someone is buying multiple properties, running short-term rentals as a business, or investing at a larger scale. This can allow direct ownership even in restricted zones, but it comes with trade-offs. You have more complex taxes, ongoing reporting requirements, higher legal costs, so for most individuals, the fideicomiso is still the most common route. Now there's one more method you might hear about, which is buying through a Mexican citizen's name. This usually comes up in situations where a foreigner has a Mexican spouse, a trusted friend or business partner, or someone suggests it in a way to avoid using a fideicomiso. And on the surface, it might seem like a simpler option because a Mexican citizen can directly own property in the restricted zone. So technically, the property could be placed entirely in their name. But here's the reality. If the property is in someone else's name, legally it's theirs, not yours, even if you paid for it, even if there's a private agreement, even if you trust them completely. Mexican law will recognize the person on the title as the true owner. Now, in some cases, like a marriage, there can be legal protections depending on how assets were structured, but that still depends on things like marriage laws, property regimes, and proper legal documentation. So this is not something you would want to assume is safe without understanding the details, because this is one of the most common ways foreigners get into trouble. They try to simplify the process and end up giving up legal control. Now let's talk about the actual process. Buying property in Mexico is not as simple as just signing a contract. One key figure in the process is the Notario Público. This is not just a notary like in the US. A notario is a highly trained legal professional appointed by the government. They are responsible for verifying the legality of the transaction, ensuring the title is clean, calculating and collecting taxes, and officially registering the property. If a deal is not properly recorded in the public registry, it is not legally valid. You'll also typically pay closing costs ranging from 4% to 8% of the purchase price. And if you're using a fideicomiso, there are some initial setup fees plus an annual maintenance fee. Now let's talk about the part that can make or break your investment, the risks. One of the biggest risks is something called ejido land. Ejido land is communal land, and it cannot legally be sold the same way as private property. Over the years, some foreigners have bought ejido land thinking it was legitimate, only to later find out that they don't actually own anything. Other risks include buying property without a clear title, sellers who don't have legal ownership, skipping proper legal review, or relying only on a real estate agent without a lawyer. And this is the key. In Mexico, it is your responsibility as the buyer to verify everything. That's why working with an independent real estate attorney is one of the smartest moves you can make. So at the end of the day, can foreigners buy property in Mexico? Yes. And not only can you buy, you can fully control, profit from, and pass down that property. But the difference between a great investment and costly mistake comes down to understanding the system, where you're buying, how it's structured, and whether you do it the right way. Because if you do, Mexico can be one of the most attractive real estate markets in the world right now. And this is Mexico Insider. Thanks for watching.